Hi, my name is Amanda Panacea, and you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This is a community for self-healers, biohackers, practitioners, and any other helping professionals. You're in the right place if you're seeking conversations about how pain becomes passion, the connection between physical, energetic, mental, and our spiritual self, finding your body's ancient wisdom, the latest biohacking technologies, clinical research, and if you just want to nerd out about complex biochemistry and quantum physics. But this is also for entrepreneurs who seek infinite abundance and a supportive community. So pour a cup of King coffee or Sisters tea and let's join the revolution. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Healer Revolution podcast. I'm Amanda Panacea, and I am just super over the moon today to introduce a new mentor and a really incredible oracle in the space of chronic illness and trauma healing. It is Dr. Kathleen King. She is the founder of Primal Trust, and she has just such an incredible story. She originally graduated with a doctorate degree in physical therapy from Pacific University in 2003. She has postgraduate training in orthopedic manual therapy and specialized in somatic movement and neuroscience. She brings evidence-based science, quantum energetics, and profound personal experience together in her training and program called Primal Trust. A lot of Primal Trust includes neuroplasticity-based healing methods and limbic system rewiring techniques. She herself suffered for over a decade with debilitating chronic infections and sensitivities such as Lyme disease, mold illness, chronic fatigue, and she's also an ancestral chain breaker and has awakened into her true self-alignment. She has a really incredible drive for truth and freedom and has created an amazing community to support others that are on their own transformational path with her program, Primal Trust. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Panacea, and this is my podcast, The Healer Revolution. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to have one of my idols and one of my mentors. Her name is Dr. Kathleen King, and she is the founder of the program Primal Trust. So hello, Dr. Kat. Is it okay to call you Dr. Kat? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I know this is the first time we've met, but I called you one of my mentors because immediately when I saw your program and literally heard you talk for the first time, I was like, she gets it. She has been coming to the same conclusions as me. And she literally has paved the way for every other person who is struggling. And it was like your program was exactly what I needed. And I'm sure a lot of other people really resonate with that as well. So, so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad it's been helpful for you.
Yeah. So your story is one of just absolute resiliency. And I know you've talked about it a little bit on in the program, but I would love to hear your story, but in a way of how did you find some of your mentors? Who taught you some of these modalities? Who really made it click at certain points? And then when did you start creating your own modalities and starting to be now I am the guru?
All right. Yeah. So I spent many years sick. Really, I started with chronic illness around age 25, right after I graduated as a physical therapist. Interesting. I'd say one of my first mentors would have been John Sarno, because as a physical therapist, I worked with chronic pain. And John Sarno was sort of a pioneer with mind-body medicine. And so I got a transmission pretty early on that pain is in the brain and that you can help somebody move through chronic pain with mind-body approaches. And I did that for several years. And I think that in that time, I really started to understand the human psyche and work with chronic conditions and that personality, that archetype as it related to pain. Well, my story took a turn in that I became very ill with Lyme disease, mold toxicity, Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue. All of these diagnoses, none of them were chronic pain because I honestly didn't believe in chronic pain because I worked with chronic pain. So I never ended up with it, which is very rare for someone with Lyme and all of the things I had. So here's the first issue is I did not connect the dots between my training with mind-body medicine and chronic pain and chronic infection, chronic illness that I had. I thought I was different and that I needed to approach it with herbs and diet and antibiotics anti-killers, all that kind of stuff. And I went down that hill, that pathway for a long time, not applying the skills I already had. That's the blind spot we often have as self-healers, is that we have medicine inside of us, but we get scared and we get blinded to our own medicine and our own understanding. So that's the first point I want to make, is that I was blinded initially because I got scared and I got put into a fix-it paradigm. And I went into that for many, many years. And then I realized like it wasn't working. I was healing a little bit on and off. I would have a mentor from time to time say, hey, I bet if you would regulate your nervous system and deal with some of these core wounds that your Lyme disease would fade away. And I was like, no, like I've got real diagnoses. And at the time, my identity needed these diagnoses to have justification for my suffering, because it was a way of making real the unconscious suffering that I'd actually had my whole life. But now I had, lab tests and authority figures to give me that validation. So this is another big piece. I needed validation outside of me that there was something wrong, and I wasn't ready to get rid of those things. And so even though I had certain, what I would say, mentors come across my path in those years, I couldn't take their advice because I would have to lose something. I'd have to lose my external validation. I wasn't ready for that. So I went on a good decade long of suffering to the point where I was bedbound and had to have full-time care for my children, and my diagnoses just racked up. And then eventually the story turned in that I was so debilitated that I thought, well, all this fixing isn't working. And I just needed to surrender. Like, okay, how can I just start living with chronic illness? How can I show up for my kids in whatever way? And then a light bulb went off in my head and said, well, what if chronic illness is healed in the same way as chronic pain? So in that surrender, my blind spot was removed. And I remembered an algorithm that I had learned very early on of dealing with the brain. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So I started doing self-directed neuroplasticity and functional neurology, very similar to what I used to teach 15 years prior. And sure enough, my symptoms started getting better. I'm like, what the hell? I've had this knowledge the whole damn time. And that is often the irony, is that we have like certain wisdom inside of us that we think, no, I need some expert to tell me what to do. I'd say my first mentor was just surrender, like true surrender of like, I can't fix myself. So surrendering my ego to the process and surrendering the authority figures and all of that, and then I really started studying a lot of the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, other neuroplasticity leaders like Annie Hopper, The Brain That Heals, Norman Doidge, Bruce Lipton, and really looking at approaching the whole thing from a mind-body view, just like I taught people with chronic pain. And I decided to treat myself as if I was one of those chronic pain people. And that's what started to put the pieces together. And so I initially started with a basic brain retraining program of DNRS and quickly decided that for me, it wasn't enough to just have that top-down method. And so I brought in my old tools of somatics and vagus nerve retraining and bottom up and created what I call my ABC dimensional shift program. And that's how my program started. So also along the way, I must say that I did have one mentor who I still have. Her name is Dorothy. She was my mentor on adulting myself. And all along she would say, Kathleen, you need to develop this inner adult. You just don't have that running for you. You're like a scared little child all the time. And eventually I wasn't ready to be an adult because I wanted an adult to rescue me still. I wanted someone outside of me. That's where the doctors fit in. And right around this time where I started self-directed neuroplasticity, vagus nerve retraining, things like that for chronic illness, I also started to say, okay, I need to become that regulated adult that I've been seeking outside of myself. I need to take that responsibility off my husband, off my friends, off these other figures, and become that adult. So my mentor, Dorothy, really gave me that transmission. And so between neuroplasticity and somatics and vagus nerve retraining and the adulting piece, that's how I developed Primal Trust. And, it was a process of over a couple years developing the whole thing. That's what I do now. I teach people how to weave all these things together. And it's been an incredibly successful program. And it's really just the map, the journey that I took myself on. And I'm trying to save people some time that took me to figure it out. So yeah, that's my story.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I resonate with a lot of your story. I went to school for therapy and I became a licensed mental health counselor 10, 12 years ago. And when I first got sick, the last thing I was going to do was any kind of brain retraining. I already knew all about that. That was not something that I ever needed to do. And of course, 2 years later, that was part of that. And then some of the things you mentioned, somatic retraining, vagus nerve, orienting yourself, those were the most impactful things that I did. And then also what I love about your program is it goes into parts that you don't even know that you're going to need, or you don't even have words for them. Like a lot of the program detailed about the resistance. So if you could talk a little bit about how we create that resistance without even knowing it, maybe what parts work is and how that kind of maps out in your program.
Yeah. So ultimately, chronic illness is an underlying resistance to ourselves, to life, and resistance causes chronic inflammation in the body. And so a lot of people end up trying to fix themselves because they're resisting the symptoms they have, they're resisting the spouse they have, they're resisting the life they have. And they're on this obsessive, I need to fix it. I need to come up with the perfect diet, the perfect protocol, the perfect this. But that approach is an approach of resistance underneath of it all. It's an inner psyche that's like, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. And it's obsessively looking for how to fix itself. Now that is a stress response. And now often people are trying to calm down their body with neuroplasticity and meditation, but the programs, the way they're implementing their programs or their protocol is with a tremendous amount of stress and resistance, which ultimately keeps our nervous system bound and constricted and contracted. It keeps us identifying with parts of us, our aspects of our psyche that think we're broken or are in resistance to what is. And so I work a lot on helping you to discover your inner psyche and parts that are driving you to do programs and protocols and diets from a place of fix-it resistance so that you can say, oh, I'm choosing to do this because I'm trying to get away from something. What would be another reason that I would choose to eat differently? What would be another reason that I would choose to do this neuroplasticity exercise other than trying to fix myself? So I help people to reorient the way that they use their tools so that they're doing it from a state of personal growth, expansion, a way of getting inspired of how they want to live their day, rather than I hope this symptom goes away by doing this tool.
Yeah. And already just doing the work myself and talking with other people about it, there's a lot of rigidity that comes with this population and people that are dealing with chronic illness. And I get a lot of questions like, well, then can I still do coffee enemas? Can I still do my sauna? Is that okay?
It's a good question. And I think that I would answer it like this. So if I told you, the path is learning self-love and doing what you want, does that mean you should go drink gasoline? Because you're like, no, should you eat pesticide-filled food just because? No. Should you not try to help your body in any way, shape, or form? No. The point is unless you are fully awake and enlightened being, you're going to be holding on to some toxins. You're going to need to help your body by eating appropriate foods, but you're doing it not to fix yourself. You're doing it because it's part of the way that you love your body. You recognize you live in a world that you're inhaling a lot of toxins and you're not eating the best foods. And you're not these things aren't your saviors. They're not oh, if I do this protocol, then this will go away. It's done with a little more lightness and openness, and it's done with okay, I have been resisting the heck out of my life lately. Probably doing something to help me detox right now is a good thing because I haven't been on my A game, meaning I haven't been in a heart open place. So I'm holding on to stuff and I'm going to help my body while I do the work of getting into alignment. And I know that's the most important thing, but it's okay to do these things. So I'm absolutely not a purist. I think all of it works. It's just your mindset about why and not expecting these protocols and things to be your savior.
Yeah. And in your program, I think you do such a fantastic job explaining why some of these like programs or interventions have a very short-term benefit. And then people usually like fall off. They go to a different practitioner, a different program, a different diet. Can you explain that for everyone?
Yeah. So it's really common to enter any new program and be filled with hope. Oh, this is what's going to fix me. Well, what happens is when you have hope, your nervous system relaxes and it says, oh, we finally found the answer. And in that relaxation, your symptoms get better. But because the underlying psyche is still actually addicted to fixing yourself, within usually a couple weeks, doubt will start to creep in like, oh, wait, I think I feel a symptom. Oh, no, it might not be working. And very soon you're right back to the same, like, oh my gosh, I don't think this is working. I don't know why I felt better initially. It was working and now it's not. It was working because you actually relaxed and you felt hope. And in that relaxation, your nervous system operated better, but your psyche returned to its set point of fear of any new symptom and resistance. And before long, you're back into resistance. So it wasn't the program that failed you. It was that you mistaked the program for being your savior. You got hope, but the old psyche of I'm broken, I need to be fixed came back in and reared its ugly head. And you're right back into that resistance and rigidity again.
So do you think that maybe the people that go through an illness and get better very quickly, that they have more so of their like personality type rooted in like an adult already?
Yeah, I think that it can happen for a couple of reasons. Some people will receive the understanding that chronic illness is sort of mediated by the limbic system and autonomic nervous system. They're like, oh, there's nothing to fix. And in that relaxation, they let go of the programming that there was something wrong with them. And in that letting go, a big decision happens. And they're like, oh, it was all just in my limbic system. They relax, they go into life. And I believe some of them do have a personality that's more wired for self-trust and probably primal trust in the first place. They just got off the path a little bit and that brain state got restored because they got the science and the information that they could just trust their body to heal. They heal easily. I see that a lot. And then there's other ones that have deep rooted, like, well, I'm not sure. I don't know. I actually feel still broken. Even, if this is all limbic, I still have this brokenness in here, and that just perpetuates the problem.
And do you work with people long-term? Like, have you been working with anyone that's maybe not improved whatsoever, even with some of this work that's just really, really stuck?
I think that for the most part, people in my community that have been there long-term are absolutely transforming. I don't think that people would stay involved. I just don't think they'd stay involved if they weren't actually changing. They're probably the person that's going to go from program to program, probably didn't apply it with the mindset that needed to be applied. So I actually haven't seen a lot of people say, I've never had someone say, I've been in here for a year and a half and I haven't noticed anything. I've never heard that. So I've heard people go through my Primal Trust mentorship once and be like, okay, I'm still having symptoms, but I have all these changes and I'm going to do it again. And by the second round, I usually see like a real big shift. Some people go through the first time and have, total magic, but usually people stay because they're noticing a shift and they just want to stay on the path. I'd say most people actually do my program twice because it is more of a spiral-based program, meaning it's not a linear beginning and end. It starts to awaken your consciousness. And then you go back to the beginning and you apply the tools and the practices from a different mindset that takes you a little higher in your path. But generally, I think that if people aren't experiencing change, they're going to move on to another program because that's what people do.
Yeah, I didn't expect anyone to have not gotten anything out of it.
I think the biggest thing that I see is either someone's really in a fix-it victim consciousness and the program doesn't resonate because I'm having them do things that their ego doesn't want them to do, or it's just simply overwhelming. My program is very advanced. It's for I have two programs. I have a level 1 that's easier and I have a level 2. The level 2 is really advanced. It's a whole it's a year-long program in 6 months, really. And for some people, they're just needing to be more at level 1 and they just cannot do the level 2 program, which is why I'm actually I'm even redoing my level 1 program. It'll come out in August and I'm going to have a very simple version and then more of a scientific practitioner version coming out.
Perfect. Yeah. I recommend a lot of people to Primal Trust, but there are some that I'm like, I think you should start with brain retraining. I think that you need a little bit more of that first before you can jump into Primal Trust, because it's everything to enlighten your entire soul. So it's not something that's going to be done in a couple months. And I'm the type of person that binges something before taking any action. And I caught myself doing that with the program. So I stopped after like 5 videos and I was like, no, you actually have to do this work. Like, go back.
Yeah.
Get the workbook out.
And a lot of people do, they'll like binge watch the whole series. So it's a series of 9 classes. They'll binge watch it like Netflix, and then they'll go back and then they'll actually implement it. And I actually think it's great for people that are overwhelmed. Just watch it. You're going to have a transmission, and then come back and then actually apply the tools and actually go on a deeper journey. And, I just want to say for those that the level 2 Primal Trust mentorship, which is what we're talking about, I do have a level 1 basic brain retraining program. You can start there and just stay there for as long as you need before going into this inner work.
Yeah. And now I would love if you could kind of get into what Primal Trust means, because that name is phenomenal. And then also like how the business is set up, because you have like multiple levels and how it works.
Yeah. Well, actually interesting. So it all started with a sound bowl. I have one right here. It's a frequency. Primal Trust is the frequency of the Schumann's resonance. And my mentor, Dorothy, she was getting her sound healing certification. And she said, I want to try something on you. I think you'd really resonate. And she played the bowl. I'm just going to play it. It might sound a little funny on Zoom.
Have you had to give up coffee for health reasons? Maybe because of the stress it was putting on your adrenals, maybe because it was messing with your sleep, maybe because you felt terrible after drinking it, or maybe because you were told coffee had mold on the beans and you needed to stay away from mold. Well, what if I told you there's an organic, mycotoxin-free, quality coffee that contains reishi spores or Ganoderma lucidum? Ganoderma lucidum helps to modulate your immune system, adapt to stress, balance hormones, and doesn't give you the jitters or shakes like regular coffee used to. Sounds too good to be true, right? It's called King Coffee by the company Organo. And King Coffee came into my life when I was struggling with chronic hives, full body eczema, and mast cell activation syndrome. I hadn't drank coffee in years because it made me feel anxious, shaky, and clammy. So I had no expectations that drinking King Coffee would be any different. However, I decided to give it a try after seeing lots of amazing practitioners talk about the benefits of reishi online. I tried a 7-day sample and the chronic hives were gone by day 5. I was in shock. After that, I dove into the research on reishi and found that there are over 3,000 peer-reviewed PubMed clinical trials using reishi Ganoderma as an intervention. The company Organo also has a patent protected on their harvesting process. They double crack open the spore shells, which makes them up to 80% more potent than the body of the reishi, which is usually used in other reishi products. This also makes the spores 90% more bioavailable for your body to use. If you would like to try King Coffee, visit thehealerrevolution.myorganogold.com, or for a 7-day trial, you can check out my link tree on my Instagram at Amanda Panacea.
And as she played this frequency, I felt something inside of me that I'd never felt. I'm like, oh, that's what I've been looking for my whole life. What is that frequency? She said, it's called Primal Trust, or the Schumann's resonance. And I was like, what is that? And she says, oh, it's when your 3rd chakra of empowerment and your 4th chakra of being heart open is awakened at the same time. And you can like root into the earth and connect. And you just feel it's being inherently safe. I'm like, that's it. That's the wiring that was off my whole life. I will do everything I can to run that frequency myself instead of having a sound bowl run it for me. And it just became an intention I put in the field that I'm going to be a grid holder of Primal Trust. That's my anecdote. That's my medicine. That's all I've ever needed. That's what I needed as a child. It's what I need in my adult. And that's what I want to bring to the world. And it was like the universe just said, yep, you've been chosen to be the Oracle of Primal Trust. And all of a sudden, I just started receiving all this transmission about how to organize it, how to put it together, and how to embody that myself. And so all of my tools now had a purpose. It was to help me run the frequency of primal trust and bring that to the world. And so I received a download of a program. And that's the best way I can describe it. I was given 9 different topics, and I began the mentorship teaching it without even having the thing written. I just had the topics, and I dropped in before each class, and I just spoke what came to me. And that's how Primal Trust was born. And then from there, it had a lot of success. And so I was like, okay. I actually started the whole thing of doing like high ticket courses and all of that. And I realized I could reach a handful of people, because a lot of people who are sick can't afford to take a mentorship that's $1,500, So I then was inspired to create a membership platform where I could teach this mentorship to people at a low monthly rate, but also bring them all of the rest of my tools, which I have basic brain retraining tools and vagus nerve tools and things like that. And so I created a whole map of a level 1 program, which is all your basic tools, all your self-regulation tools, a level 2 program, which is the mentorship, which is a journey, and then a level 3 program, which is your ongoing community support, where we really get into a lot of metaphysical stuff and quantum healing and apply all these tools, but with a higher consciousness of focusing on becoming heart-opened embodiment of primal trust. So the way that my membership works is you can come in and you have access to everything. And there's just this roadmap. You start with level 1, you learn the basics. Then you move on to level 2 and you go on a long journey. It's about 6 to 8 months long of primal trust. And then level 3, is just ongoing. We have community classes that you can drop into pretty much every day of the week, sound healing, somatics, all sorts of dance, all sorts of things to just help you on a daily basis be able to shift your vibration and regulate your nervous system. But ultimately, my vision is to create a community of people who want to be grid holders of primal trust and bring self-regulation to the world.
Yeah, you all listening, I cannot even begin to go into detail how amazing this program is. With each 1.5 to 2 hour long educational presentation, she also has what are called attunements, which are like guided visualizations and meditations, which help you to actually integrate what she's teaching. She also has free community support groups. Like yesterday, I did a sound bowl healing. It was phenomenal. I also really love the sound bowls as well. And she has support groups for grief. And it honestly, I would have paid $10,000 for this program. Mm-hmm. So you're just so generous for making it affordable to everyone. And yeah, I'm so appreciative. And I know a lot of people will be and are already as well too.
Yeah, it's been growing. It's been growing really fast. And that was really what I saw in a vision. I could offer this to a few people for thousands of dollars, which is what I was. I could offer it to most of the world in a way that they can afford it. And the cool thing is I have all these community members that step up to help me lead. It's amazing. It's really co-created and there's so much support, so much support. It's been really awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, I have no doubt that it will continue to be very successful. And so I thought of another question. It's one of my favorite topics. And when I started talking about it on my social media platform, I guess it was posted in one of those communities that may be referred to as social justice warriors. And it was the topic of secondary gains, or getting really truthful with yourself as to the reasons that you may not be improving or you're staying sick. And it just got a flood of hatred.
Uh-huh. I love this topic.
Yeah, I do too. I do. Yeah. I don't know if you would like to explain what secondary gains are and what that means for illness, addiction, anything really.
It's so perfect. I was actually going to make a few reels about just this. They're very provocative. I get a lot of hate mail too when I bring this up. But the thing is, this is so true. And so if you can just put your ego aside for just a moment and be willing to listen This could actually literally break you free from chronic illness if you can see something that is often hidden, which is something that that you just described as secondary gains, or in a need that gets met in a dysfunctional way. And so in the work of Primal Trust, I have people discover why maybe being ill is getting a need met, why a part of your psyche might actually be in favor of running this frequency in your nervous system. And it's often deeply unconscious. It's not conscious. And we all have aspects, like we all have an aspect of what is known as victim consciousness, protector consciousness. We all have it. It's not something to be ashamed of. So first of all, do not be ashamed. I and everyone that I work with, when we discover this, we find a freedom. I just had somebody yesterday write me an email who discovered their secondary gains. It was phenomenal. So I'm going to tell you about hers. She has multiple chemical sensitivity. She said that she realized that a part of her thinks that if she could like go out and smell everything, she would, if she wasn't able to smell everything, she would lose a superpower. She's like, oh, it's my superpower that I can smell everything and sense everything and feel everything. And if I was healed, I wouldn't be so sensitive. I wouldn't be able to, I'd lose a superpower. And she said, I actually feel afraid to be free. And she found that a lot of people find that the illness gives them the ability to justify needing a boundary and needing space. Like, mommy needs to lay down. I don't feel good. Hey, can you help me with dinner? Instead of saying, I'd like to just indulge by going and reading my book. Will you make dinner for the kids? There is a way of getting caretaken that maybe a deep part of you just really wants to be caretaken, but to speak it feels indulgent, selfish, even narcissistic. And so having a reason to get caretaken. Sometimes those secondary gains, often if people grow up in trauma or they've been not seen in their suffering, when they finally get seen that I have this diagnosis and I suffer and people acknowledge that you suffer, there's a deep validation that a part of you has been craving your whole life. And then if all of a sudden you look healthy and well, and you're not getting validated for any of that anymore, it's like, they don't know I suffered. They don't know what I have to deal with. And that's hard to give up as well. So it's a way of getting a need met that's very real and very true. And it's something to have a lot of compassion for, like, wow, I need to have care. I need to have space. I need validation, but it needs to come in a higher and better way. So we discover these secondary gains. There's so many. I mean, those are just a few.
Yeah. For me personally, I was basically begging the universe to have a reason to give up alcohol, to quit drinking, to stop going out, doing drugs. And it was like my worst self-sabotage behavior. And of course, the universe gave me a huge reason. Yeah. And in that process, my secondary gain was like using that as the excuse, like, well, you literally can't do it anymore. So here's your excuse to rest and to not go out, not drink alcohol. And then the other secondary gain I really picked up on was I got the most sick when I finally met a partner who was incredibly supportive and super safe. And it was almost like my nervous system relaxed and just let out. Like my chronic issue was horrible skin condition. So it was almost like it let everything out of my skin. Like, here you go. You're shedding all of your skin. And now you get to recreate who you are without alcohol, without those generational, like, issues, problems, repetitive subconscious behaviors. And that's the other big part that I absolutely love about your program and your message is you literally get to create who you are from scratch. It doesn't matter who you were in the past, who you think you are, who your mom thinks you are, who your partner thinks you are. This is your life to create, and the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so beautiful when you can see that the brilliance of our inner psyche that loves us so much, that wants us to find a wholeness, often in a dysfunctional way. It's neutral to chronic illness as long as if you're getting a need met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those needs are so often just so subconscious, passed down from generations and people that we have no idea unless we actually like sit down and do some of this work.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I mean, I remember early on, I would have been mad as heck if someone would have said to me that I had I was getting my needs met through illness, oh my gosh, I would have ripped their head off early on, so, for those of you listening, like, no, that's not me. I felt the same way at one point, but if you are dealing with chronic illness and you're not getting better, it's something worth pondering.
Yeah. And for me, I had a legit virus. I had hepatitis A. I was in the hospital. So there was a very valid medical reason. And then you could literally see the mold I was exposed to after that. And so then you go down that rabbit hole of mold and how to heal and diets and switching. And you go through that pathway of exactly what you mentioned. Okay, I need to fix this problem. I need to get on a mold detox. I need to do this kind of testing. And then you get it better, get worse, get better, get worse, get better, get worse, until finally you're like, maybe I have something to do with this also.
Yeah. And it's not that mold wasn't an instigator, and it wasn't that the virus or these things that happen aren't real, but the way that we respond probably has an underlying factor to how our body responded to those things and how we were able to either recover or not recover.
Yeah, definitely. I agree as well. And you can see that in, how people respond to any illness. You have the some people who get super sick and have a hard time recovering, and other people who brush it right off. So one of the things I was also wanting to ask you about Primal Trust is, I feel like this would be the absolute best program for substance abuse facilities and long-term residential, partial hospitalization. Have you gotten this program into any of those types of settings, or is that anything on the horizon for you?
Yeah. What I'd love to do is create kind of a white label version where, you'd substitute the word chronic illness for whatever your thing is. And that, it's right now I'm just building out this platform, but I have that desire for sure to get it both in that kind of thing, corporations, obviously just medical systems. It's all don't have any time, but yeah, those are things I would, that would be something I'd probably want to partner with somebody with, hey, let's create this version. So if you ever get motivated, let me know. So that we can get that out there into a greater capacity.
Yeah. Awesome. I still technically work in the psychiatric systems, detox facilities for the insurance side. So I don't know how I can make that happen, but I can try and find out.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And even in counseling programs, God, do I wish I learned this stuff 10 years ago. I went to counseling school because I knew I needed counseling. And of course, I learned all about theories and the books and who people were.
Yep.
Didn't learn any application skills whatsoever.
I know. I say to myself, I wish I would have learned Primal Trust 15 years ago, 10 years ago. It was blinded to me too.
Well, we're here now. You're here now. So yes. Like I said, I have no doubt this program is just going to continue to shine and spread very rapidly. So I congratulate you for all your success. And again, I'm just so thankful that I found you as well.
Oh, it's really been amazing. It's all been word of mouth. I haven't spent a dime on marketing yet. It's all been just, people like you that find it. And I think that, I'm really excited about what's going to happen in the future and to be able to take the same concept into different platforms. So, thank you for helping to spread the word. And it just means the world to me. It really does.
Of course. Yeah. We are all here because healed people heal people. So
yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Do you have anything else you wanted to chat about before we end the show?
Gosh, I think we've covered a lot of great things. I just want people to know that, a lot of us are you're on this journey, and it can feel so isolating. It can feel so isolating and so hopeless, but I want you to know that there's a purpose for this. There is a purpose that's so much greater. That it's so much more than just healing your illness. You're being reborn. You're being transmuted. You're doing things that no one in your family line were able to do with their consciousness and with their will. And the changes that you're going to be making as you go on this self-healing journey, it will affect generations to come. And I believe it actually affects past timelines. This is more my quantum thing. And so just really have compassion for yourself, because in some way you signed up to heal deep, deep wounding. And, I've created a community to be able to help hold the space for people like you. So if it resonates, I'd love to have you involved in our community, but just, have compassion, because you're doing the work of many, many generations. It's not anyone that can go on this journey. So
beautiful. Yeah. And when you're called in this space, it is always to pass down your knowledge and the healing that you've done. On that note, something you just mentioned that I forgot to ask you about was that quantum and being able to change like past generations and other people in your family, other people around you, the ability to resonate at a frequency that impacts others. And if you could share one last story, I really love this story. It's something I've been working on as well, is the story about how you feel like the work actually helped with your mother opening up, and that story.
Yeah, sure. So I first learned about this quantum timeline healing from Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I didn't understand it, but I decided to play with it. So I would practice in my brain rewiring practice. I would imagine my past timeline being different. I was one of those people that are like, I don't have any happy memories with my mom. And so I said, well, I'm going to create it and imagine as if it did happen. I used to imagine my mother like pushing me on a swing, telling me that I was her greatest joy. My mom she had a lot of mental illness. She was not emotionally, she was just flat. She wasn't able to express herself. And here I was, it was like 40 years later, imagining this, and she was still, flat, has a lot of mental issues. We rarely talked. I left home at age 15, but I would imagine, and I would see her face, and I would imagine that in a timeline, another timeline, a parallel timeline, that my mother's spirit and my spirit were very connected. I began to feel a witness that was true, that my mom on a human level couldn't connect to me, but on a spiritual level, we were very connected. And on a spiritual level, I was her greatest joy for this lifetime. And when I knew that was true, I started to heal, because I believed in that relationship. 6 months later, I called my mom. It doesn't happen very often. And she was crying, which doesn't happen because she's not emotional. She said, I don't know what's happening to me. I'm starting to cry and I feel all these feelings. And she said, I just want you to know that you are my greatest joy. I said, I already know, Mom. And I was like, that's just one out of many examples I could share. It's beautiful. It's why when one family member quits drinking, all of a sudden other family members do, because that generational pattern was broken. It's really interesting how it just goes backwards. Like somehow that in another parallel reality, that shift in your field affects all different timelines. And this is just, really weird quantum stuff, but you have no idea what you can change by just deciding to find a reality that you can perceive differently. And that it's not about like pretending. It wasn't about pretending that my mom wasn't there for me, but I said, on some level, my mom's spirit wanted to connect with me and she just couldn't because she had trauma. So I'm going to find her in that frequency. I'm going to find her and I'm going to create a story with her and bring that forward and bring that into this reality. And that's what happened.
That's just so incredible and so beautiful. I thought I was going to cry talking to you during this podcast. I was like, don't cry.
Yeah, this is magical work. Neuroplasticity is a tool of deep, I believe it can, heal generations, not just your symptoms.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for all of this. So
welcome.
If you all listening are loving what you're hearing, if you could let us know where to find you.
Yeah, sure. Primaltrust.org. That's the easiest way. Instagram at Dr. Kathleen King, Kathleen with a C, but primaltrust.org. Pretty easy to find me that way.
Perfect. And I will link the links and all that in the show notes for everyone to find as well. All right, Dr. Kat, I'm just so fangirling still about getting to talk to you. And I just appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you. I've loved this conversation. I love connecting with like-minded souls. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
EMFs, electrosmog, and geopathic stress are an increasing problem in today's world. As someone who lives in a major city, one of the ways that I help lessen this kind of stress on my body is with a Somavedic. Somavedic is designed on the principles of controlled release of energy from precious and semi-precious stones and metals such as platinum, palladium, gold, and silver. This creates a coherent field more than 2,800 square feet. It's an Eastern approach to wellness combined with Western frequency therapy technology, and this puts Somavedic in a very unique device category all on its own. It helps with mitigating negative effects of EMF, radiation, including 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, geopathic stress, Curie and Hartmann lines, oxidative stress, and free radicals. Somavedic also structures water and changes it into mountain quality spring water that is natural to our bodies and cells. It can structure and harmonize any tap water or bottled water. It provides water in its most natural state, just like nature intended. And you can harness the benefit just by placing your water jug next to Somavedic. You can check out somavedic.com, and for 10% off, you can use my code PANACEA, PANACEA.